Well, hello. This is Lori Klein. Welcome to my coffee break. I'm enjoying a cup of decaf cafe americano. Uh, I tend to have my fully leaded caffeine first thing in the morning, and then after that, if I need a little pick me up, the decaf is about all I can take. Um, so, I wanted to talk a little bit about my reflections on the scene with Sarah and this time in her life, and also some of the things I saw on the discussion board. Um, if you saw the scene that I had with Sarah, there were times when she was quite angry. There were times when she was crying, and I think it's very important for us to soothe ourselves and not become too reactive when we're in the presence of somebody who's angry or crying. One of the things that happens for me in the course of my work is over the years I've sometimes had medical students shadow me when I visit with patients. And I have had them tell me that sometimes the patient might start crying and they'll get alarmed. Oh my goodness, the patient's crying. Why isn't Lori doing anything to stop the patient from crying? And I think that it's very helpful for us to reframe some of that conditioning and to see that expression of anger or sadness, the tears, as it's a really helpful first step toward a patient kind of being able to process their feelings. That in some ways, you need to let them out a little bit. They need to let them out a little bit in order that for them to make their own pain more meaningful to them, because people hold so much inside, and so once they're able to engage with somebody, feel that support, feel that somebody is not afraid of them and is accompanying them, that can really be a time for them to start constructing a narrative that might really carry them through. A narrative that then allows them to keep speaking what had been unspeakable for them before. The first time I saw the scene with Sarah, I was kind of dismayed because by my body posture, I felt like I was really hunched down, really collapsed down, and and then someone who was looking at it with me pointed out to me that perhaps I was sinking down more to be more congruent with Sarah and how deflated and sad she felt. And when I looked at that, I thought, okay, maybe that is why I was in that position. I do in general agree. I think it's really important for us to use our body in different ways in providing spiritual care, and so having in some ways a similar position is a way of saying, I understand what's going on for you, and I'm with you. I'm accompanying you in it. In looking at some of what was posted on the discussion board for that week, I noticed something that I've also noticed with my patients. So, of course, my patients have a wide variety of beliefs about what happens in the afterlife, and they have a wide variety, or not, and they have a wide variety of beliefs about what they need to do to be ready to enter that afterlife. And one common thread is worrying about the relationships they have in this life. So sometimes that takes the form of forgiveness that they feel like either they need to extend or they need to ask for, or maybe it's somebody they need to say I love you to. And it also um, has the effect of worrying about what's going to happen with some of the people who they love after they've died. And so um, there is a real emphasis among patients about relationships. And I think that if that hasn't come up in a particular assessment with a patient, it can be really important to ask about that. One thing I've noticed in my own life, uh, in the last days of being with somebody before they die, and when I say in my own life, I mean I'm talking now about the deaths of people who I personally am close to, is that small moments are so memorable when you're at the end of life, and they really can nourish you afterward. And I've taken that learning from my personal life, and I have used that in my professional work, so that first of all, I think it's a way of letting people who will be the survivors, the surviving loved ones of the patient or of the person who's dying, to let them know that those memories may well hold a special place for them, and also to try to help patients and families or patients and loved ones reach that goal of having time to create those special memories. Sarah, in particular, because she has a young son, she has some legacy work to do. And I had an experience recently where I learned about that legacy work in a different way. So when I have uh, worked in the past with people who want to create videos or they want to write things down for their, particularly for their children or their grandchildren to know about, they've tended to focus on what are my values that I want you to remember, or what are some things about my life that I want you to remember. And that is all clearly important. And I had a patient once who had relatively young children, and she was by far the primary parent. And so she was the one who would have the memories of them when they were very young. And so when she was creating some of the, she would talk to me and I would take notes, and then I would give that back to her as a written document. For each child, she went through, this is when you first walked. Here's the circumstances of your birth. Here's when you reached your first major milestones. Here are some things I've been proud of you about. And, what are some memories that she had of their even earlier childhood, that there wouldn't be a way for her to remind them of those things later on. And so I thought that was a really great and different kind of angle on doing legacy work. I also wanted to talk a little bit about integration of spiritual care and spiritual care assessment. And just to emphasize that assessment, even for spiritual care, is not a one-time thing. Sure, there are some questions that are not particularly going to change, such as if there's a particular religious tradition that the patient follows, that may not change so much. But what a patient is using in terms of coping, or what new practices they might want to develop, including spiritual practices. What are their sources of strength and what are their challenges? Each of these things can change from time to time. And in fact, if I was going to be meeting with Sarah more than once, I would really try to regard each encounter not as if I'd never met her before, but really to have almost that much openness. I'm now coming into this new interaction with you really differently, so that the kind of anger and grief that Sarah was expressing um, in that first visit that I had with her, she really might be in a very different place the next time I saw her, and I always try to keep that in mind. So I've enjoyed sharing a cup of decaf Americano with you, and look forward to engaging with you further in the course. Bye for now.